So what else is new in our post-doomed lives?
Well, I'd probably give people some advice on referencing other stuff and where to go. Um, the book Forsaken, and
Your book?
there's also I believe the audio book is out for Forsaken,
Oh,
because
spoken
I
by...
recorded some of it. I did 2 or 3 chapters. So did, I think, Alex Hyde White, some of the rest of the cast. Oli might have. I don't know all of who did. Um, but the book is the reason I'm not just plugging it. I don't get any money out of this. Um, After Doomed came out, um, Craig Nevius reached out to us
You sure did.
and has been a supporter since we released the film. We really weren't in much contact with him prior to that, but we have been since. He's an old friend. We worked at Concord together, and he wrote the Fantastic Four movie, 4 drafts of it, which are floating around out there. And Craig is interviewed in the book Forsaken. So it's sort of between Forsaken and Doomed and my book, The Doomed Journal. They're kind of a companion piece. So if you want to really have the full Doomed Fantastic Four Corman experience and get all the information,
Yeah.
I think also the Worst brothers are in Forsaken. They were interviewed. There's 4 or 5 interviews in Forsaken.
He was able to, speak with a couple of the, key personnel on the original 94 film that we didn't,
Yes.
for whatever reason, either have
Yes.
contact with.
Yep.
Do you know if Mick Strawn has any presence in that book? He was the production designer.
I believe he is one of the missing interview. I think he's in there.
Yeah, fabulous. Because Mick, he and I connected as well as with Craig on Facebook
Yes.
after the
Yes.
release of Doomed. And with both of them, I was just like, it wasn't an oversight. We had a list of, we interviewed nearly 20 people for that. And it was...
Well, we interviewed 20, and I think we had a list of 30.
We did, yeah.
Yeah.
And I just wish that we would have connected, prior, of course, the release of the movie. But thank God that we did afterwards, because they've given us a lot of cool stories and information about it.
No.
A
I
lot of
mean,
great pictures.
it's been fantastic. And I mean, as a fan like you and I are, like, I bought Forsaken. I'm one of the interviews, and I wrote the introduction.
Yep.
But
Yeah, I've got
it
it
was
over on my
self-published.
shelf, I think.
Yeah, it
Probably
was self-published. I wasn't
yours.
going to ask him. I wasn't going to ask him for a free copy because it was
Copy
going to come out of his
yeah.
pocket, and he's a
No.
sweet guy.
These are the guys.
So I bought a copy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally bought my own copy of that book, and I highly recommend it to anybody who considers themselves a fan of Corman's FF. You must read this book, because he's got at least 5 or 6 interviews, and he has new interviews with his interviews. And I feel like what we did with Doomed when we interviewed everybody is we really dredged up a lot of memories.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, remember,
we
Mark,
saw this.
Each interview we did over in the studio. Where was that again? It was over the valley or under the... I never
The Dreaming Tree.
Dreaming Tree, yes. But where was that?
Octay Ortobasi's studio.
Yeah, Octay was the best. But we
RDP.
we had each of those interview subjects for at least 2 hours, 3-hour blocks. And we've got an hour and a half, 2 hours of raw footage of each of these people. And we had to decide what to keep in and what not to. And so much of that was just reminiscing. And whenever there'd be a crossover, when, we'd be interviewing Joseph Culp, and then Carl Ciarfalio comes in, and they hang out for an hour in between interviews.
Yeah.
It was just such a great time. Glenn Garland.
It really was. It was a dream come true for fans of the Fantastic Four movie, which you and I are big fans of.
Yeah. Glenn Garland was another guy who I really got to know after we interviewed him for it. And, Glenn's been like an A-list editor these days. And I'll be watching a show, And it'll
Yes.
be, edited by Glenn Garland. Poker Face was the
Yes.
last one, the Ryan Johnson.
He's one of the biggest success stories to come out of Corman at that time.
Yeah, you may be right, and especially when you look at these credits, because they all have credits after FF, and, most of them
Yes.
are bigger and better type work. Maybe not better, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
But
Alexandra Patsavas is now a big music supervisor, and she was at Corman when I was at Corman. And Aaron Osborne, who directed me in Caged Heat 3000,
you're Jonathan
was a
Demme
production.
connection.
Yeah, he had to drop that name. He was the director of Caged Heat 3000. He was a production designer at Corman, and he was kind of rewarded with Caged Heat 3000, even though he wrote it. Corman produced it because he didn't want to lose Aaron, because Aaron was a hell of a production designer. And if you look up Aaron Osborne now on IMDb, holy shit.
Really? Yeah, a lot of big
He
titles.
does, well, he was a genius even then,
Mhm.
but in the last 30 years, he's done so many known, recognizable studio film. He's amazing. He's
One,
one of the best production designers out there.
one of my favorite little kind of serendipitous meetings and connections were with the Vice show that just came out earlier this year, the
Yes,
Unleashed.
yes.
And, I was interviewed here in my office at where I teach.
Yeah,
And, I knew that they were getting a couple of other people to interview for this. But when it
yes,
finally aired and it started, and I'm like, I know this voice. I'm like, Joseph Culp narrated the whole damn series, you know?
yes.
And I'm like, that's just so wonderful that, and I love seeing them get that, not the work because of us, but just seeing
No, but
them out there continuing to work,
yeah,
Rebecca and Alex and Joseph,
Rebecca, and I
Michael.
hope I'm correct when I say this, because it just seems this way. We're Facebook friends and
Yep.
friends outside. I love her and Will.
Hmm.
Um, Rebecca, in my opinion, is working now more than she's ever worked in her life.
What was she
She has
just in?
tapped into that Hallmark.
Oh, well, she was just in a big Netflix show.
No, she's in everything, for Christ's sake.
Was it
She's in everything.
No, not Citadel. What was Rebecca just in? She
No,
was,
I know I can't think of it because I haven't seen it yet.
yeah, I can't either, but she had a fairly
But
large role in one of the episodes.
she's working her butt off.
Yeah.
And of course, she worked in the late 80s and 90s and 2000s. I'm not saying she didn't work, but she's never home. I mean, I'm like, every time she posts on Facebook, she and Will are either in Canada
Right there in
or
Vancouver.
Vancouver. Yeah, she's in Vancouver a
Always.
lot, doing all the Hallmark, and I think I don't know if it's USA, but she is just nonstop, and I couldn't be happier for her. She's so paid her dues.
I've been keeping in touch with Michael Bailey Smith. He's written a hell of a script. He sent me a couple of drafts of it, and I don't
Oh,
know.
no kidding.
Yeah, it's about it's a father-son thing with football being the central kind of
Okay.
drop of the story, but
Okay.
it's just this relationship drama. And I read the very first draft, and now I believe he's got it optioned.
Oh,
Um,
good for him.
Good for him, right? But he's a terrific writer.
Yeah. So I'm very happy for Michael. And I'm gonna add to that, he's not the only cast member who's been writing, has he?
Who's that? Which other ones
Alex
have there
Hyde
been?
White.
Alex,
Alex Hyde White wrote his autobiography finally.
I have it. I have it? Shoot, I
I
think
got to get it. I
is it
keep
available?
forgetting.
I
I
know
keep meaning to buy it.
we talk so much about how we try to support all of our kind of colleagues who put out new
Yes.
material in terms of buying the movies and
Yes.
downloading them and buying
Yes.
the books. And I'd love to hear more about Alex, especially the fact,
Oh God, yeah.
Joseph were both these legacy actors. And,
That's
you're
another book I would
also going to
like.
find out about, his dad, and I'm sure growing up,
Joseph Culp, write
and
your book.
Joseph, and exactly Joseph. What the hell?
Joseph, we should have a Joseph and Alex set of two books. What a
Exactly.
fantastic collection that would be. But I mean, really, for fans, you can start a shelf of books connected to Fantastic Four.
Yeah. No, I think I mean, I think you're right. Um, what else
I
has
mean,
been
I have it. I'm starting it.
There you go. You're up to your what, third or fourth now? Fifth?
Let's see. Jay has moved back to Los Angeles
Oh, he's not in
just
North.
in time,
He's not up at
just in
North
time for
anymore.
Alex to leave Los Angeles.
Jay was a pastor up in Northern
And
California.
I think he's
Yeah.
still a pastor, but he's now in LA again.
I didn't know that. Jay's the best. I would
He
say
moved
Jay.
down maybe a year ago. I haven't seen him yet, but I have to correct that oversight.
Yep.
I love Jay. Jay Underwood is one of the best people I've ever met.
I've done 2 or 3 shows with Jay. Occasionally, I'll get called to go to a convention or something. They want to have a Fantastic Four reunion, and we'll sit on a panel.
Right.
We'll screen Doomed or screen FF. And
Wonderful.
I know, and I've sat with on different occasions at different cons, Joseph and Jay.
Yeah.
You know, actors, they have this bigger than life persona, and whenever you see them, you know, it's such a shock when you meet them, and especially Jay. I mean, Joseph's the best, but Jay is just the
Yeah.
sweetest man. Lovely
Just a good
family.
human
Yeah, he
being.
really is. Exactly. God
There's
bless.
no question that when he leaves this earth, he will have left it a better place.
Yes. No.
I don't know about the rest of us, but with Jay, that guy is just a saint.
Uh,
I can't believe that he had one of the strong words in our documentary when he called Eichinger a ding dong
and
or
that always gets the biggest laugh.
Aviarad.
Aviarad. That
Yeah, when he
always
calls
gets
him a
the
ding
biggest.
dong, I think
Yeah.
for Jay that's swearing.
Yeah, and he also opens the movie Doomed, the documentary, his
Yeah,
words talking about, how Hollywood can be. Um, yeah, no, he's a treasure.
yeah, I love his passion and his just his character,
Yeah.
and he's a good actor. I mean, I think Jay now, maybe because sometimes like with Rebecca,
Mhm.
it takes years for people to really appreciate you. I think Jay um will work more as an actor. I really do.
Yeah, I think because I don't know if he dropped out of acting, but he certainly wasn't doing as much as he was after he had
Well,
moved.
you can't really pursue a career in acting when you're in Reading. When you're 8 hours out of New York, I mean, out of LA, I think you accept that it's back burner at best.
Yeah, well, I hope he gets out there again.
I do too, and I really think he will, because not only do I think people remember him separate of everything else, but I think with Fantastic Four being a hot topic for at least the next 2 years,
Yes.
um, I think we're going to see that. So,
Yeah.
Marty, I want to ask you a question.
Uh-oh.
We'll both answer it.
Okay.
What specifically have you learned now since we released the film? Can you give me one really good gem?
I
Um,
can, although I
something
don't.
you didn't know then.
It's always been a touchy subject, and I don't know if we've ever talked about it in public. And I don't
Go
know
for
if
it.
you know where I'm going with this.
I hope I do.
But
And I
when
don't care. Go for it.
all right, when you
No
screened
secrets.
Doomed at the Aero Theater in LA,
I
probably
knew you were going
I
there.
know it was probably maybe spring of 2017, I think it would have been. And you had the whole cast there. I've got a photograph of just all of you standing in front of the marquee.
Oh my God. It's everybody and Roger.
And Roger, well, this is my
It's
question,
the
Mark.
only event that Roger attended.
Well,
Oops. I
and
brought him up.
I'll never forget the day after you called me and you were talking about how great it went and how it was packed and there was 300 plus people, 500, I forget
Yes.
the number. But
Yes.
the second you told me the next thing, my heart dropped and I just felt sick. And you told me that Roger walked out. And
Yes.
I never understood why until shortly after you had posited a theory, and I think you might be right as to the reason, but what was the reason, do you think, that Roger Corman
Let
walked
me
out?
let me set this up a little better. The only truly non-convention, non-private screening of Doomed um, we had was at the Arrow Theater, a theater that specializes in older movies and kind of cult classics. You know, they'd show the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and it's like a 400 seat theater.
Mhm.
It's a beautiful theater, and they agreed to host the film. This was about a month after our premiere that you had at San Diego Comic-Con 2015, and we had shown it at the Screen Actors Guild a few days before, just as a private screening for the Guild and
Best trip
Guild
of my
members.
life. It was the best trip of my life that
No,
year, so I was
it's
there.
one of the best weekends of my life ever, because it
Yeah.
was just, we were just having the press release. We're sitting at San Diego Comic-Con and the Esquire article drops.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I remember you and me. And then Lloyd Kaufman.
He introduced it to the crowd.
Thank you, Marty Langford, and congratulations on Doom, ladies and gentlemen. Marty Langford.
Absolutely last minute. We didn't even know, I think, he was going to be there.
We weren't positive, no.
Yeah, and he shows up and he was agreeable to introduce it. So anyway, so a month after the San Diego Comic-Con, I had managed to finagle this screening, and it was a public screening. I mean, it was in the Arrow's brochure, and they posted about it on their website. And even Roger, obviously we wanted Roger to be there. This was going to probably be the only screening, and it would be a big crowd, and I knew Roger would dig that. And there was and we were going to invite him up on stage at the end with the whole cast.
Right, that whole Q&A session is an extra feature on the Doomed Blu-ray set.
Roger RSVP'd the day before.
Oh, you called me. I remember.
He's super busy, so I don't begrudge him last minute RSVPs for sure. Finally, at like, I don't know, 8:05, I cue them to start the film, and I now don't have a seat. So I'm standing room only, and it's okay because I can't sit during this movie. I have to walk around. I did it at SAG, and
Yeah.
we were sold out at SAG, and I stood in the aisle and watched the movie. So I'm standing and I'm watching Doomed, and the audience loved it. They loved Glenn Garland. They loved Jay. They loved everybody. And I love to see our people's reactions. I love to see what's making Rebecca laugh, or how Alex feels. I mean, I want them to be proud of this movie because it really is a testament to them. I look over, and this is maybe 15 minutes into the film, and Roger and his guests are gone. And I'm thinking, oh my God, my first thought, being the person that I am, I hoped he was okay. I was afraid, because again, he's 90.
Right.
I'm like, oh my God, I hope our movie didn't kill him. So I immediately head into the lobby, and I'm like, I'm looking around. I go back in, and one of the cast members is sitting near the back, and I'm like, have you seen Roger? And they're like, he left. I don't know why, but he left. And so I'm like, oh, holy shit. What is he?
When you called me
the
next morning, and you front loaded the conversation with all the praise, and I was just on cloud nine, and you kind of then eased into, well, there was one thing. It's like, Roger walked out, and then we were back and forth.
Little detail.
He must have been sick. Maybe he had something bad to eat. Maybe he wasn't feeling well.
He's 90.
Yeah. But then, and I forget how this happened, whether or not it was your theory or but it made perfect sense. So continue.
Well, I didn't have a theory immediately,
No, we didn't.
but I didn't think it was a good thing. Like, why would you leave the movie? Because he had been asked and he had agreed to be on the panel.
Mhm.
And knowing his age, and that he's very busy and has a lot of commitments, I did not announce that he was going to be on the panel because I didn't want to promise something and then have it not happen.
Yeah.
But people knew he would be in attendance because he signed a few autographs. He signed my Fantastic Four poster.
Oh, you're the only one with a Corman signature on it.
And the worsts.
Oh, true. I
They
didn't
signed
get on mine either. Shit.
I said I'm a whore. I got everybody. I just need Mercedes McNabb.
There you go.
So I got an email from Roger Corman's assistant, who was just lovely and so nice to us through this whole process, I want to say. And she says, Mark, yes. No, first email. She says, Mark, is there a number where you can be reached, please? And I gave her the number, and then I got a phone call. And she's like, Roger would like to speak with you. I was like, okay. And she was like, are you going to be available by phone this afternoon? And she wasn't rude, and she wasn't, in no way did she sound angry, but she also wasn't giving me any information. She wasn't like, Roger just loved the movie and wasn't feeling well and had to leave early, so he wants to just convey that to you in person. No, this was like, Roger would like to speak with you. And he had left the movie early, so I was like, and then I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Obviously, I cleared my calendar. If it really needed clearing, I don't remember, but I cleared my calendar because I didn't want to miss Roger's call because I knew there was the potential to play phone tag for days. So I literally, this was an important call no matter what, whether it was good or bad. I didn't want to miss this call. And Roger would probably call once and then give up. And I would have preferred to go over to the office and see him in person, frankly. And maybe that's what I should have done, but I didn't want it to seem confrontational either. And I didn't want, if it was bad, I didn't want to do that in person, I guess. I'm a chicken. And I never heard from him.
Yeah.
So I don't know if, to this day, I can't tell you 100%, but I have a theory, and I think it's a reliable theory. He obviously was not calling to buy the film because he wouldn't have given that up. And I could be wrong, but I don't think he was calling to say good job because I knew he hadn't stayed.
Yeah. And that's the length of time that he stayed is a clue as well.
Yeah, because right around the time he would have left in the film is when several of us, myself, Glenn, and others, are talking about the studio, his studio, which was, in fact, condemned. That's not an exaggeration. I saw the sign. I think there's a picture of it somewhere. The lumber yard that we used for editing at one time had been condemned. It was in such disarray. And perhaps he fixed it and then it wasn't condemned anymore. But if you worked there, it was pretty shabby. Even by Corman standards. And that isn't meant as an indictment against Roger. It's almost a compliment because this guy,
it's a goofy
he didn't spend a dime
movie.
he didn't have to spend.
Yeah.
And then I know Glenn talked about the cat who took care of all the rats. But the bottom line is that location, like most of Venice, because it's right on the ocean, everything had rats down there. New buildings probably had to go to great lengths to keep them out. Old buildings, probably that studio, you couldn't have kept the rats out. When we were shooting Fantastic Four, they had ants which again, if you know Los Angeles, that's part of living in Los Angeles. It wasn't meant to say, you know, oh, Roger's so cheap, his studio had ants. Now, it's true he didn't do much to get rid of the ants, and they were in the casting, they were in the cast's dressing rooms.
Jay talks
and
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I don't know if I know at that age, a lot of men are concerned about the legacy they leave behind, but he's famous for being the king of low budget filmmaking, and he prides himself on it, and he should. But with that comes a little bit of color. So my theory would basically be that he's sitting there with 3 or 4 friends of his family, and we start poking fun at him about the condition of his studio and the low budget. And in that context, perhaps it wasn't whatever. But here's the joke. Here's the thing I'm a little disappointed about. We had sent Roger a copy of the film when we had it.
I would have imagined, and I thought he'd
and I was told
seen it
by Roger's assistant. He watched it and loved it, was thoroughly entertained.
Yeah.
So when Roger shows up at the theater that night, I think he's already seen the movie and we're good.
Right.
I don't think this is going to be news. So that's the only, because I realize now that he probably hadn't watched the film. His assistant probably watched the film. And in her eyes, it was funny and all in good taste and a lovely little film that doesn't, you know, he's been ripped apart by a few documentaries over the years. And I get it, because he consented to be interviewed and then they just crucified him, and that sucks.
Yeah.
We didn't do that. This film,
no, we lauded him.
If anything, it's a tribute to Roger and what he was able to accomplish, and the fact that even on a deal like this with Marvel, he came out okay.
Yeah, yeah. See,
I don't think anybody was pissed about that.
Yeah, my theory was that, and I think we had discussed this, that he didn't like the fact that Lloyd Kaufman claimed to have been brought the property first. You know,
go into that a little. Talk about that.
The legend had always been that Bernd Eichinger reached out to Roger Corman because Roger was the king of making movies inexpensively. And that was the legacy, that's the line, and that's what we've all believed. But when we interviewed Lloyd, if you remember, Mark, I interviewed Sean and Lloyd, maybe even months later than the principal of photography with the rest of the cast and crew.
Oh, yes. It was months later.
So we were in Troma, you know, in New York, in Brooklyn or the Bronx, Brooklyn, I think it was.
Yeah, because they weren't on the West Coast.
Right. So when I'm interviewing Lloyd, we were just originally going to talk to him about getting the perspective of somebody that was in distribution in the 90s and understood, you know, the industry. Yeah. But then
you didn't even know if you were going to be able to use it.
Right, exactly. But it was like, it's Lloyd Kaufman, he's a name. And plus we were there to interview Sean Howe anyway. So it was a day in New York.
And he's an expert.
But then Lloyd dropped the bomb during the interview that no, according to Lloyd, Bernd Eichinger first came to him in Troma in New York and asked him if he wanted to produce a Fantastic Four movie. So my theory was that Roger saw that and was upset with it, and either didn't
and you correct me if I'm wrong, but you and I and everybody else we know of, nobody had heard this before.
No, it's only ever come from Lloyd, and
it came right from Lloyd's mouth.
Yeah, so it's impossible to verify. We had discussions talking about it in the documentary. Should we include it? What if he's lying? And I'm like, I don't think he's lying, but you know.
No, I didn't think he was lying. I didn't know if he was exaggerating.
Right, maybe there was a phone call.
Memory.
Yeah. But
he's a salesman. He's a huckster. He's brilliant at that. And like Corman, he should be proud of it. I'm not picking on him, but you sometimes wonder if they're selling.
Yeah, exactly. So between both of our competing theories, I think I've always given yours a little bit more weight, because just logic does dictate that, you know, that makes sense. I get it. And the Lloyd thing, I don't know. I never knew if I thought that was the reason that Roger kind of walked in our film.
It could also be both.
Yeah, you're right.
He and Julie could have been sitting there and Lloyd, and then Glenn, and
Right.
then me.
And then at this point, he's like, that's the last straw.
It gets a lot better. Sadly, he missed it. It gets a lot better as the film. Now, here's another thing I've just thought of that I hadn't thought of before.
Mm.
What if he goes back to his office the next morning and he's kind of irritated,
Mm-hmm.
and then he finally watches the movie in his office,
Finishes it, sees what a loving portrait it is, realizes
sees that it's not
I don't have to yell at
90
Mark
minutes of
Sikes.
Corman crucifixion.
Yeah.
Maybe that, I just thought of that, Marty.
Yeah.
I swear to God, I've never had that thought. Maybe he did finally watch the full movie and realize, no, we're not going to sue him.
Yeah. So that phone call never happened, I guess.
We're not going to halt their distribution deal.
I've got maybe.
So that's a very interesting situation. Mm-hmm. What have you been up to in the past 5 years?
Oh gosh, Mark.
Since we released the film.
Yeah.
Has it changed your life at all?
The film has changed my life. It has, in that, and you and I talked about this a little bit earlier, that I still am, I mean, I take it with great pride, and I'm very proud of myself and for you for making this movie. But the thing that always shocks me is that you and I have kind of become the experts on Corman's Fantastic Four. Between you,
a bit,
me, William, who wrote the book, and maybe Sean, we represent kind of the knowledge base of this, having interviewed everybody at least a couple, at least once, and for hours at a time. We are the de facto experts. So I love, like, when Vice did the show, to come to us, and interview us to get that information. Well, it is, I mean, it kind of keeps giving, Mark. There's so much information out there about this, and there's still to this day, Mick Strawn, the production designer, or Glenn, or somebody will post a picture or something that I've just never seen. The Worst Brothers might say something about the session they had, and somebody had a Polaroid of it. And I just love seeing that stuff. And I'm just like, where were you when we were making this movie? Why couldn't I have tracked this down then? I wanted ours to be the first and last word on Roger Corman's Fantastic Four. And I think we are, but I just love how, there's always new stuff out there that we discover.
I have 2 quick points to end with.
Yes.
And then you can end it totally if you want. Number one,
yes.
I want to commit to the fans, with all the things building on Fantastic Four, the property, and with the recent Vice miniseries on Icons about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which you were a part of. You were interviewed for that. And so were the cast, and Joseph Culp, our Dr. Doom, was the narrator, which was amazing. He's great, always great. I want to just, make a commitment to the fans that we're going to start back up. I know we've been a little absentee from the Facebook page because, frankly, there hasn't been much in the way of news, both on Doomed or Corman's FF or the new FF. It's been a lot of media and internet BS and people trying to create headlines where they don't exist. All the casting rumors have so far proven premature. So once we start to get more and more, we're going to try to turn the Doomed Facebook page into sort of like Fantastic Four Central for the new movie, like how it connects to the old movie. Maybe they'll finally pay homage to the original cast and give them cameos in the new movie. That would be amazing. I'm putting it out there.
Yeah.
And maybe somehow, I'm also putting this out there, maybe somehow this will eventually lead to the release of this amazing little film.
Yeah, release Corman's FF. We'll bring the hashtag back.
It really deserves to be seen. I really think so. And my last note would simply be what the movie did to me after. It's probably my proudest accomplishment in my life, really, because I'm very proud of the films that I've cast, and I'm very proud to have worked on FF and many others, many Corman films and many films since. I worked with Tobe Hooper, Mark Jones, some of the horror legends. But Doomed was a labor of love for both of us. And you and I have been friends most of our adult lives,
35 years
since the 80s. Yeah, 35 years. So it was an opportunity to work with my best friend on a positive, memorable thing that created you as a film director,
Mhm.
you as a documentarian, you as an expert. That spawned from Doomed, and me as a documentary producer. And I don't know. I'd like to think we both were integral to this film. We both contributed stuff, and it was better because of it, and it was possible because of it. And I just, I thank you, because this definitely wouldn't have been possible without Marty Langford. I know I contributed, but I've always said that you were the key linchpin, like editing. You edited this movie, and you don't get enough credit for that. You finagled an amazing score, and I couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I got us our DP. That's great. Octave was a wonderful. That's great. And I coordinated the LA shit, the actors, and Olean reached out because I knew them. But I mean, really, I thank you, because without you, I wouldn't have been able to do this film. And this film is one of the things I'm most proud of in my life, if not the most proud. And it led to the production of my first book, The Doomed Journal, which I'm also pretty proud of. And the doc tells the story of Doomed, which kind of kicked me in the ass about making books too.
Yeah.
Because I did one and I'm now doing my third. So that's all because of Doomed. It's all because of 10 years ago, almost to the month, you and I got on the phone and kicked each other in the ass and said, why aren't we doing this? This is nuts.
I think I have that email from 2013, I think it was, when we first started talking about it. And thank you, Mark, so much. And I've always been a little fixated on my accomplishments, and not my legacy, but just, what I could leave behind. And I remember all through my 20s, I gave myself until I was 30 to make a film that just had an impact, and it didn't have to be some huge thing, make me a big star. I just wanted to produce something. And it took me, 20 years after that deadline. But I did do it before I turned 50. And it's absolutely...
So many people never get to do it.
Yeah, I know. It's absolutely my proudest professional achievement. I mean, I have 3 children, and they're probably 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
Doomed is my 4th in my life.
Professionally. In your professional life, Doomed is a hell of a feather in your cap.
Yeah, no, thanks.
You'd always put your kids first.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks for...
Well, thank you too.